this is Becca. Welcome. Thank you for stopping by today. Today I'll be sharing my finished prompt number 2, which is Nest, for the Roxy's Journal of Stitchery Field Notes project, and also the cover for the box that I will be storing my field notes stitching in. I've had lots of time to stitch this week because I've been babysitting my little granddoggy, Missy. My son and daughter-in-law and their little boys went on vacation, and Missy hurt herself, so she had to stay in her crate because she was jumping off of a chair, and I don't know if she actually did something to a disc or a muscle. They're not quite sure yet, but she had to stay in her crate. She wasn't too happy in there. She'd get lonely if I left that area of the house, so I stayed in the kitchen most of the time to keep her company, and I thought, while I'm here, I might as well do some stitching. So that's what I did, and I finished early, which gives me time to go back to a quilt I'm working on. So I will show you my finished prompt number 2. And this is the cover again for my Field Notes journal, and this is put on the lining. So this is a big long rectangle, if you can kind of picture that, and this rectangle will be sewn to the back of my little book here, so that when you open it, it will look like this. So if we said this was the lining, this green, and this was the cover, this will be opened out and they'll be stitched together. So on the cover, of course it accordion folds. I put the cover for the Stitchery project on that, so that's why it's on a separate piece of fabric. So this is the cover, and when this is all together, it will open and look like this. So, and I just pin this to keep it out of my way because I find it hard to sew on the accordion folded. That's just me. But I pin all of the rest of the pages out of my way so that I can sew and not have that big bulk of fabric hanging. So this is what I've done for the nest. And as I showed in my last video, I had chosen a hummingbird nest. And so I went ahead and did lots of the stitching. I'm trying to show or depict a lot of the prompts with stitching as much as possible. Not so much pieces of fabric, but stitching. So that's kind of what I did here. And I did the branch, which I had showed last video, and that's 4 pieces of thread, 4 strands that are combined in different colors to kind of give me that sort of a mottled look or gnarly look of a branch. And then the next thing I did was I did the pine needles on here, stitched this little piece. I think I had shown that in the last video. That's a piece of fabric that I stitched over. And next I tackled the nest, and I had shown the base of that in my last video. I'll link that last video to this one. So I wanted to put the lichen on the nest, and that was kind of a challenge for me. I wasn't quite sure how I would do that. And I'll just show you how I did it if you'd like to just know for your own information, or if you're ever trying to add lichen to something, or maybe just something that looks textural. And the fibers that I used for the lichen are this sheep silk by the Thread Gatherer, and this is a wool thread, which is absolutely beautiful. I love it. I mean, I love that. This is one by Chameleon Threads, and it's a cotton, and this is kind of that lichen color as well. So I used a strand of each for this, to do the lichen. And this is what I did. There's a strand of each here, and I did not make this up. This is something that I saw on YouTube, and I don't remember. I've seen it in a few different places, so I don't know where I saw it, but I think if you searched stitching lichen, it would come up. So you just bring your thread up from the back, and then the next thing you would do is basically just twirl your needle. Just keep twirling, twirling, till you get a lot of wraps or twists. As you can see right here, it's starting to twist. And basically, it's kind of one of those things where you have to sort of judge it and see if you like what you've done so far. And slide them down, slide the little twists down to your fabric. And keep twisting and see if you like it. And what happens is when you get down there, there's all these little interesting twisty pieces, and you can adjust it to the way that you'd like it. And so maybe something like that is something that you'd like. And what I did was I just let the needle drop, just to untwist a little bit, and then I just would take it and maybe take a stitch here or there just to sort of couch it down where I wanted it, and maybe pull another little piece in, and again just come up from the back and couch it down. And you can continue doing this, and it does have nice texture. It has a little bit of relief to it, and you know, you can come up wherever, right next to that, or wherever you'd like to come up, and again do the same thing again, just twisting the thread, or twisting your needle, which is twisting the thread, and slide those twists down. And you can do it as tight or as loose as you'd like. I did them fairly tight, and slide them down. Just kind of get them where you'd like them to be down there. And when you bring it down, of course, it curls even more on itself. And then wherever if you're happy with that, I just kind of let my thread go and untwist a bit. This is doubled, so we'll just pull it out a little. And so you can just again take it and kind of tack down those little curly cues, and come up again from the back and just sort of come through wherever you think it needs it, and do a little tack. My thread here is still twisted. It needs to be separated a bit. It helps to untwist this thread. And then again, if you can see those little wonderful little curly cues here, you can kind of shape it however you'd like, and then just go down, taking a little tacking stitch. And that's basically how I did the lichen on my nest, and I liked it. I loved the colors. I thought that they made me think of lichen, the color of lichen when you're out hiking. Of course, lichen looks kind of like little leaves. Well, there's some that look like little bugles, and just depends. But I thought that this gave the impression of lichen on here. And then I took another thread, which was wool again, and I just came up and made loops. Came up from the back, made a loop, and then went down. Came up, made a loop, and went down, secured them. And trying to also make that look like moss that was in there. I didn't want it too loopy, but just little bits, as you can see here. It's a little bit loopy, but I did tack some of it down. So that's just to look like moss kind of peeking through the lichen. And so I liked the way that that looked. I was happy with that. And then for the little rim on the nest, a lot of hummingbirds put this very downy, soft kind of, not quite sure where they find it, little fibrous type of material along the edge of their nests, and they will line their nests with it as well. And I had this thread, or this yarn I should say, that I've been crocheting a blanket out of for our living room, and it's a plied yarn. It's 2 plies really, but I separated it into 4 plies because this is such a tiny nest. So I just broke the plies down further so that they were more like this size or this size. And came up through from the back and went around with this, started here and then went around with this. And then I just couched this down with some silk that I had, some silk floss that I had in the same color. So that gives you the kind of downy little edging to the nest. And then I began on the female, and I used some green colors. I don't have those colors with me. I put all of my flosses away, being that I was done with this project, but I did show them in the last video. So I took some greens and some beiges, and these were variegated threads, and I just stitched her head. She has duller colors, of course, as the female. Their wings are brown. I noticed in all the photos their wings are brown. So did her wing in brown, and then under their neck, their chin, and their breast, they have an ivory feather with little spots of gray, kind of gray. So this is a brownish gray I've used here. And did her eye. They seem to have a little white patch on the back of, or sometimes the top of their eye. So I did that, and of course put some little feet in here and her beak. And then I kind of went crazy with these. I may have gotten a little slap happy with the glitter threads, or the sparkle threads, which are these by Sulky, which are my favorites. These are a hollow shimmer, which is kind of like a holographic thread, and I used the blue and the green for the backs of the hummingbirds, because even the female does have iridescence to her back according to the pictures. So I used some of that on her back to give her kind of that iridescent look on here, a shimmering. I'm not sure if the light is catching that or not. I'll try to move it so it does. And I just labeled here female and male. And I had also labeled the red pine, or the Norway pine, here, and that this is a hummingbird nest, and that the genus of this tree is a Pinus resinosa, the red pine. And so then I began to work on the male hummingbird, and he's got his back to the female, but he's looking over his shoulder. And I used a little bit deeper green on his feathers, and put in the brown where he has brown and ivory. They have sort of an ivory patch here near their this ruby throated portion. And same thing with the eye. I put in some white here did his beak, and just sort of tried to indicate that these feathers come together in the back here. Took some artistic license with both of them. There aren't brown edges on their feathers, but I just wanted to delineate here. And I went around the outside of her with a blue variegated yarn. Again, just wanting to add some interest to both of them and taking artistic license there. But again, with him, I did the shimmer thread, the hollow shimmer thread again with the blue and the green. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'll try to move it. And then for his little patch under his throat, I used the this red. This is a silver metallic, and these are all by Sulky. I just prefer Sulky. I think they have beautiful, beautiful threads. And this is a flat thread, so it's very nice. It does catch the light. It's pretty. I used some of that, and I also used some of this copper color under his throat, just to kind of give it a little bit more sparkle and shine. So that was done here. And then I moved on to the dragonfly. And these are dragonflies that I've seen out in the mountains in neighboring states here and also here. And I have some dragonfly wings like this, and I forgot to grab them out of my book, but I just happened to find a couple of wings when we were out hiking one day, and they look like this with these spotted little spots, and I forgot what this was called. This was the dragonfly that I had on a piece of fabric, and it was a little bit too large for this image. I think yes, I have it here. I was going to cut this out and stitch this down, but I thought it kind of dwarfed the hummingbirds, so I just drew it a little bit smaller. And after I drew it, I just took my Derwent pencils and put in these little black spots. It's called the 12, I think it's called the 12 spotted dragonfly, if I'm not mistaken, and there's definitely 12 spots. There's 3 and 3, 3 and 3. So this was done also with the hollow shimmer, and I used this color. I was going to use gold, but they seem to be a little more silvery, the wings. I didn't want to go totally to silver, so I went to this color. Yeah, there isn't a name on here, but this is kind of a platinum color. And so I used this on the wings, and I just outlined these wings with a stem stitch. And then I just did a random pattern in here. Not sure if you can see that. There's a little random pattern to show the little veining that is in the leaves, or the little fretwork. There are so many. It's so fine in a dragonfly's wing that I couldn't stitch all the little tiny lines, but I just kind of gave, in other words, again, a suggestion. And this is my Derwent watercolor pencils, and this is as well. I didn't stitch his body or his head. And I also added this little flower up here that I had taken out of another piece of fabric, and I thought it just added a nice little touch of color here. And then down here for the little nest, this was that little nest that I cut out of a piece of fabric, and again, that's in the last video. I cut this little nest down to look a little more cylindrical, like it might be a hummingbird's shaped nest. And for this, I used this same thread. I didn't use the cotton as well. I just used the wool on that, and I just did little tiny lazy daisy stitches on this to suggest lichen on here. And then again here, I used this same yarn that I have. This is, I forgot what this yarn is. It's acrylic and something. I'm not sure if it's alpaca, but I used a very thin ply of this around the opening of the nest. And generally they have that in the nest too, a lot of times padding the nest. So I added that on there. And then lastly, there's the pine cone. And I didn't want to try to stitch the pine cone. I thought it may lose some of its detail and beauty. I just loved this pine cone. So I took my Derwent pencils and I just used a few colors. Let's see. I chose a few colors for the pine cone. Let's see. I chose a brown and a kind of a straw color. I don't know if this is brown ochre. And I also chose a kind of a rusty color, terracotta, and I used some of this red as well. No, it was this red as well. And that is basically what I did for the pine cone. I also added some of my white. You can see how tiny my white pencil is. I use it to blend colors and make them a little bit lighter if they need to be made lighter. But when I did this, the best way I have found to make the colors blend, and of course it is permanent, not that I would be washing this or anything, but I use this Liquitex fabric medium, and for me it's even better than water because sometimes water will make the colors bleed into the fabric, where this is thicker, and this just allows you to spread the color but not have it bleed out. So that was kind of nice to use all of these. And you can see the lighter colors like the straw color here, and then the brown. I had to add the red and that rusty color, that terracotta color, just to give it a little more realistic coloring. And again, as I've said, I used the Millennium pen for the writing on here, but for the pine cone, I wanted to detail or show the detail of the pine cone in these little, whatever they're called, on the pine cone, the little, almost like petals. And I used this Micron pen, and this is also a permanent. Probably most people are familiar with these, and this is a 01, and it is a brown. This might be sepia. Just see if there's a color on here. I think this is sepia. This one is. So that was just the nice, without going black to make it very, stand out too much, too harsh. I used this brown sepia on there just to sort of detail the pine cone a little bit. So that is it. That is my page, and it's all stitched in. And as I said, I pin these because it is the bane of my life to try to stitch on an accordion folded. I just don't like all of this hanging off. I find it a hindrance, so I just put some pins in here so that I could stitch this page on. And as I said, this will be stitched on here back to back. The two rectangles will be stitched together, and then the delineations between the pages, so it will look like this when it's all together. And I completed the box. I'll show you that. This is the box that is completed here. This was the pink box that I had thought I would use for this, and I had a beautiful piece of lace, and I had showed that in the last video, and I wanted to put it kind of askew on here, and it kind of comes over the edge here and here, and I just touched the edges with my paintbrush and my Ranger Distress Oxide ink, and this does not bleed. I've sprayed this with water and ironed it, and it doesn't bleed. So I know it will mix with water on paper, but in fabric it seems to be okay. It didn't bleed into anything. So what I did here was the lace. I put some little pieces of fabric with writing in the corners, and then I just kind of composed a little collage here of fabric with some writing, and these roses from a fabric. I don't know if I have that fabric right here or not. Let's see. No, I don't have that fabric here, but I took these pieces out of that fabric. This nest is from another piece of fabric, and this bird is from this piece of fabric, and this is the color that the bird was originally. And I just didn't really want the yellow on here. I mean, I'm sure it would have been very pretty, but I wanted a more rosy colored bird on here. So again, out came my Derwent watercolor pencils, and I just did some reds and some oranges, a little bit of white on here. I emphasized the blue a little bit more on here in the beak. As you can see, the beak is very pale there, and I just emphasized that. And I did some stitching on these, some of these elements, not a lot of heavy stitching, because the pages have a lot of stitching, and I just didn't want to do any more. So the butterfly has some stitching on it here in this green, and the bird has some stitching on her wings here of that blue. There's some this deep red. I didn't bring these in here, my floss colors, in the rose. A little bit of stitching on the same color as the wing on these little eggs here in the nest, and then some stitching on this rose here, this rose that's opened up so beautifully, and some French knots in that deep red and green on here. And everything is invisibly stitched down onto the lace. So I placed everything on the lace first, then I stitched it onto the lace, and once it was all tacked and invisible stitched to the lace, I went ahead and I did my embroidery on there, and then lastly I glued it to the box. And again, I just left some to hang over the edge, just to kind of give an interesting vintagey look, haphazard kind of look on here. And the glue that I used to glue this down, I'm not a paper artist or don't know a lot about these things. Even with fabric, I have used Mod Podge, but for this I used my Art Glitter Glue, which I absolutely love, and this is the one that dries clear. It's very nice, and it goes a long way. I've actually used this on a quilt that I'm working on. So I used that, and what I did was I just glued a little bit here, pressed it down and let that dry, and then I lifted up another portion and put glue on the back, and then laid that down, pressed it down, and let that dry. And I just kept going that way, doing another portion, pressing it down, letting it dry, until I finished at the very end, at the very bottom. And I keep little snippets. Right now I'm keeping the fabric pages when we get the next prompt, I'll take another page that has been torn for prompt number 3, but I have little things in here that, just in case, I wouldn't use that lace probably, but just little things that I might use in here, this bird or the butterfly. This is the bird that I had chosen originally. I almost put the bluebird on here, which again, I love that too. Maybe he'll show up or she'll show up somewhere else. So this will go, when everything's all completed and stitched together, this will go in here like this in my box. And I do have a ribbon. I have a pink ribbon that I will probably put on the outside here where there's a little slit to tie these together, but I don't want to have to do that to open and close to go in and look at this little journal. So this will probably go on the outside of the box. So the box is completed. Prompt number 2 is completed, so that's really great. I'll just take this back out again. And I just thought and let's see. I also have this little piece that I had torn off of the fabric that I use for these pages. It's the same mottled fabric, and I wrote field notes on here, and I'm not sure if I'll stitch this. This has got fusible interfacing on it as well. I may stitch that, but either way, I'm going to put this on the end of the box just to identify what's in here. So it will say on here field notes. So that will go on the box. Again, not sure if I'll stitch that or not. And I just wanted to share one other thing quickly. When I am stitching anything like this, I keep my flosses on a stitch bow. These are called stitch bows, and I love these. I have a DMC cabinet where I keep my flosses in, and I just love it's easy. You just slip the papers off the floss, slide them onto the stitch bow, and you're done. But I know that a lot of people have gatherings of the random threads, the orts that they have, and I don't do that. I don't put them into a little grouping unless they're really tiny little pieces. Like here are some little pieces that I might use. But what I do, if I have something like this is 6 strands, and say I'm only using 2 of the 6, and I have this left, now rather than put this into an ort pile or tangle or anything like that, I'd rather not do that. I would rather have that together with this, and when I'm stitching this thread, I don't have to go searching through my little ort pile, and I just take it and wrap it around. This is 4 strands here, I think. And I just wrap it around, and it stays nicely. I just put it on there, and I put it back in the little drawer. Same thing with this. This is probably got 4 or 5 strands on here, so I only used 1 strand of this. Rather than put this in with the orts, the 1 random thread, I put them with this stitch bow. I keep them with this, and that way if I find I want this color, I don't have to search. I know it's right here on the stitch bow. So I just thought I'd share that because I find it a good way, at least for me, it works nicely to locate a thread that I'm looking for. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I guess I can try to pop this in here. Pop these both in. So here is my final page, or my prompt number 2 page, the last one done, and my box. And I'll just give you a little close-up of this again. This was really lots of fun. I really enjoyed it. I spent more time stitching than I should have. I should have been gardening, but I did manage to squeeze some of that in too. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I'm wishing you many blessings. Bye for now.